Hey guys, it's Christina. Welcome back to my channel, and this impromptu intro I'm doing for this video because I am in my car and wanted to film it now before I forgot. So this video is going to be 30-minute vegan meals that honestly some of them are probably even closer to 20, but the longest one is 30, so I rounded. 30-minute vegan meals that are super easy, super filling, super satisfying, and all very versatile. So if you don't have the ingredients I use, you can use whatever you have. My favorite thing about these dishes, other than them just being versatile and being able to swap in whatever ingredients you have at home, is there's also a lot of built-in wait time. So it's really easy to do dishes or do like whatever you need to be doing while cooking, which is what we do need to do sometimes. So I love the meals for that reason as well. And I don't want to talk too much, so to the food. So for this first recipe, we are doing tofu and broccoli, which is like a Chinese takeout inspired recipe that I basically use Mary from Mary's Test Kitchen's recipe for her seitan and broccoli, but instead I do some crispy tofu instead. So right now you can see me just doing my crispy tofu by getting a cornstarch mixture of cornstarch, salt, pepper, some garlic powder, some onion powder, and then cubing up some extra firm tofu that I had kind of pressed, like lightly pressed, I should say. You don't have to worry about getting it bone dry for this recipe. Just, make sure it's not like soggy or anything like that. Also, if your cubes aren't perfectly uniform, even better, because I think it creates some really nice texture to have kind of different size cubes that have like a little bit of an edge on them, little crumbly pieces, some variety. After tossing my tofu in the cornstarch mixture, I'm also going to put a little bit of oil. If you have a Sprite oil, that would work even better, but I don't, so just lightly putting oil on it so nothing sticks. If you have a big enough air fryer, you probably don't need to do this, but mine's a little tiny, so a little extra non-sticking helper helps, if that makes any sense. Anyway, now we are on to making the brown sauce. This is where I follow Mary's recipe pretty much to the T. The only difference is I didn't have any Shaoxing wine or any ginger, which we'll get to later. But for her recipe, we use some no chicken broth. You could find no chicken broth cubes, or I use Better Than Bouillon no chicken paste. We're gonna do some soy sauce, some toasted sesame oil, and then what makes this brown sauce is vegan oyster sauce. It's made from mushrooms. I got mine off Amazon. We also added sugar, but for some reason I don't have the clip of me adding sugar, but some sugar goes in it as well, and then the Shaoxing wine if you have Shaoxing wine. So super easy brown sauce, comes together in no time, especially the more you make it, the easier you do everything. The biggest tip I have is to just get all your ingredients out before you start making the brown sauce, and they'll just fly by. So then the next step was just kind of ripping up some broccoli into bite-sized pieces. Nothing too fancy, nothing too technical. This recipe is honestly super simple. At this point, we are ready to go. After adding some olive oil in my pan, I'm also going to add garlic to make this recipe even easier. I am using pre-chopped garlic. I usually like to use fresh garlic for this recipe, but again, we're making it 30 minutes. I literally was actually in a rush. I had somewhere to be. If you can see, the clock says 7:06, and I had somewhere to be at 7:30. So this is real life for me. This is really a 30-minute dinner, and these are some steps, hacks, whatever, not really, laziness that I do to make things 30 minutes. All right, so then after we add the garlic in and it gets a little fragrant, we'll just add our broccoli. Once the broccoli is a bright green color, then we'll add our brown sauce. And at this point, you just want to get the broccoli as coated in the sauce as possible. And what you should really do is you should make a cornstarch slurry, which is a little bit of cornstarch mixed with water. But I didn't want to do another dish, so I just added cornstarch straight to the sauce to help it thicken up. I wouldn't recommend that. I would just do the slurry. It's worth the extra dish, but that's what we were doing today. Like I said, now it's 7:14. I had somewhere to be at 7:30. I was panicking a bit. So once the tofu is added, then just make sure everything is as well coated as can be. We did season the cornstarch mixture, but the tofu as itself is pretty bland, so it really does need all that good brown sauce. And then I had some white rice cooking in the background, so I just added some white rice to my Tupperware. Like I said, had somewhere to be, was taking this with me. Added some pre-shredded like cabbage, carrots, it was a salad mix I just had, and I wanted some extra veggies to fill out my Tupperware, so added that as well, and then added my tofu and broccoli. This is one of my favorite dinners to make. I think it is so tasty. I like making this for other people a lot. I like making this with people. It's a fun dish to make, and yeah, it's great for lunch. It heats up really well, and that was our first 30-minute dinner. So our next recipe is quinoa tacos, which is something I actually used to make all the time when I was still eating meat, but starting to get into more plant-based cooking, meatless Mondays and the like. So it starts off by adding some Better Than Bouillon no beef paste to some water and cooking the quinoa in the broth. If you don't have that, that's fine. Use veggie stock. It makes a difference to use the beef broth, but it's not a make or break for this recipe. And then after the quinoa is cooked, add your taco seasonings. I use chili powder, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder. I forgot to add cumin, but I would highly recommend cumin as well. And at this point, the heat is still on my quinoa because I wanted to get the quinoa as dry as possible. So I kind of let it still finish cooking while I was adding my seasonings and really, really let all the water boil off as much as possible. As well as nutritional yeast, I also added some umami powder somewhere in there. Again, not a make or break for this recipe, but nice to add that little extra savory flavor. So then you don't have to do this. If you want to make this like a 15-minute dinner, stop here, put your quinoa on some taco shells and call it a day. But I did have a little bit of extra time. Not a lot, but a little bit. So what I did is I took my quinoa mixture, I put it on some parchment paper, or I should say a lined baking sheet with parchment paper, spread it thin, almost like a fruit roll-up, and I put that on broil for about 10 minutes so the quinoa got really dry, really nice texture. I really do enjoy this recipe so much more when the quinoa is that dry, crumbly texture. It's still not going to taste like ground beef, but the texture is just so much more similar to ground beef this way. Then I just served it on some corn tortillas I heated up on the stove, which is a must, guys. You have to heat up your corn tortillas. And then I put some smushed broccoli. I think I was trying to say guacamole. It's not even guacamole. It's just avocado. And then I topped it with my quinoa. And then I also added in some red beans and some more of that cabbage mixture as well. And normally I think I have 3 tacos, but I was in a rush that day and wasn't really that hungry, so I just had 2 that day. But yeah, 1 cup of quinoa will make about 4 servings of tacos, so it's a great recipe for meal prep as well. So for our final 30-minute vegan recipe, we are making a summer favorite, pasta salad. The pasta I'm using is about 3/4 of regular penne pasta and then 1/4 of chickpea pasta. That was just because I had just a little bit of chickpea pasta I wanted to use up, but use whatever pasta you prefer. And our pasta salad's going to be super exciting. We're going to have some crispy chickpeas. We're going to have a tomato vinaigrette, and we're going to also have some crunchy breadcrumb topping. But for now, before I get ahead of myself, we are going to start with the crispy chickpeas. So we do these first so they have as long as they possibly can to crisp up. Again, if you want to make this like a 15-minute recipe, honestly, don't make them super crispy. You could probably get this recipe done in 15 minutes as well. But yeah, for our chickpeas, we're going super simple. We're just putting them in a pan with some garlic and salt and peppering them with some oil. And then after those start to get a little bit brown, then we add some cherry tomatoes. If I had more time, I would have maybe cut these up a little. But this was another day that I was literally in a rush. I literally did only have 30 minutes to cook, so it was not worth it. So while those were cooking on the stove and the pasta was also boiling away, I got to working on my vinaigrette. It is super simple. We're just going to do equal parts olive oil to equal parts white balsamic vinegar. If you don't have white balsamic vinegar, you can use regular balsamic, or honestly any vinegar you have. Like, the vinegar is not really the make or break in this, I think. I think what's the make or break is using tomato paste. Specifically, I'm using a sun-dried tomato paste, but regular tomato paste would work as well. But yeah, the combination of the acidity and then the umami from the tomato is just fantastic and really gives the vinaigrette a little bit something extra. And then, of course, as always, salt and pepper it as well. If you want to make things exciting, you could add some basil or some more dried herbs or garlic, anything like that, but I was keeping it super simple. And by then my pasta was done. So for most pasta salads, what you want to do after the pasta is done, you want to rinse it with cold water to make sure the pasta stops cooking. And at this point, my chickpeas and tomatoes were looking pretty cooked. What I like to do is I like to kind of squash down the cherry tomatoes, let the juices burst and get all over the pan, let the chickpeas get coated in that good tomato flavor. So I let those still go on the stove for a little bit longer, and then that's when I started cutting up my broccoli. So I don't love raw broccoli, but the way it's made, or the way I should say it's prepared in this recipe, is definitely my gateway to liking raw broccoli. The trick is, if you don't like raw broccoli the way I don't like raw broccoli, the trick is to cut it so like super small, so all you get is like really tender florets, and then you don't get any of that like fibrous chew that you get from eating like big pieces of raw broccoli. You just get all the tenderness and all the good flavor. So yeah, I just cut my broccoli super small. By then everything was ready to get assembled. So I added my chickpeas and tomatoes, my pasta, my broccoli, got everything nice and coated. And I highly recommend kind of everything that's in this recipe because it holds up really well. Like, I wouldn't use like a lettuce or like spinach or anything like that because it'll wilt. But this held up in my fridge for 5 days, like pretty like no issues. I also added some vegan feta, but this is optional. Again, not a make or break. I think that's my saying for this video, but like the feta is not what makes it. It's the dressing and honestly the broccoli that makes it. And this breadcrumb topping. This actually was a game changer. Highly recommend you do this. I got this idea from Rainbow Plant Life. It's a breadcrumb almond mixture that you toast up and can add when you're ready to serve. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and if you did, please like, subscribe, comment, all that. I'd love to know what recipe you liked the most. My favorite was definitely, my favorite is definitely the tofu and broccoli because I make that meal literally all the time, but that was my first time making that pasta salad, and I was like so shocked at how good it was. I'm like literally thinking about making it again like this week. Like, it was so tasty. So yeah, would love to hear what you guys thought. And again, if you want to subscribe or whatever that people do on YouTube, it would mean the world to me. I'm a new channel and it really does help support me. Alright, until next time, my friends. Bye.